All right, everybody, it is go time. We are here. Everyone is here now. Let me turn on your guys' voices. So it is All Things Fantasy Grounds talk show, Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and today's subject is DM and player expectations. Before we get started, I'll give the disclaimer that we give at the beginning of everyone's show to make sure that nobody is mistaken about our opinions. And that is that All Things Fantasy Grounds talk show is meant to teach and help, but the opinions stated by the five of us this evening are not those of Smiteworks USA LLC or affiliated with Fantasy Grounds in any way. We have two guests with us on the show tonight, but first I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Mr. Leroon. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. Just been working on the college and the website and trying to get everything sorted and organized before year's end.
Awesome. And Fury, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well rested. I took a extra long nap today, so I feel awesome.
Cool. And we have two guests with us today. Previously with us, I believe on September 23rd, back again is Akmotu in the chat and on Discord, Mr. Jake McCarthy. How are you, sir?
Not bad, Rob. Hey, Leroon. Hey, Fury. Hey, Bunny. Thanks for having me back again, Rob. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone's having a great weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome back. And then for the first time on our show, we have another guest who's going to be helping us talk about DM and player expectations. In the Twitch chat, her name is Microsoft Sally, and then we will refer to her as, and she is also known in Discord as, Bunny. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. I'm glad you're here. So we're going to get right into it. If you guys have questions in the chat, you can post them, and we'll try to monitor those and keep up with. And we're going to be giving away a couple prizes today. Jake is going to give away another 20 by 20 map. So that's 5-foot squares, 1,000 pixel by 1,000 pixel map that he'll customize for you. If you win, it'll be like a dungeon layout or whatever you want. It won't have items like furniture in it, but it will be, what you can design for your walls or whatever you want to do, and he'll do that for you. And we're going to give away at least one thing from the DM's Guild of mine if people want that. And who knows what we might come up with along the way. No guarantees. So show notes, we wrote down a couple discussion points, so we're just gonna kind of go through this, and we'll try to have a natural conversation, and we'll just roll with it as it goes. But if we get stuck or can't think of anything to say, we'll try and go through these talking points. But I guess we'll start it off by the first one on the list, which is rules discussion. And this is if you're a DM or if you're a player, and whether, this can be online, like using Fantasy Grounds, or it can be just, playing at your kitchen table with your friends or your gaming group. And a lot of times I've seen people get bogged down or get stopped talking about a rule or which way the rule should go, or how the rule is supposed to be interpreted. So normally what I do, and different people do this differently, but what I expect in my games is if there is a discussion about a rule and it lasts for 15 or 30 seconds, and it serves as sort of a reminder, like, oh, somebody says, oh, aren't you supposed to do it this way? And we go, oh yeah, that's right, you're totally right, let's do that and move on. But if it starts to become like a discussion or even an argument, what I do is I like to try to table that. I know Jake does this as well. Try to table it. The DM will just make a decision, and then continue the game so that we're not, stopping the game for 15 minutes to argue about a rule, and then talk about it after the session's over, or even between sessions, and maybe go research that and figure out what the right answer is, and then implement it next time.
Rob, I wanted to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing I do additionally at the end of the game, in addition to addressing any rules that a player had an issue with, sometimes they don't say anything either. They just kind of like, okay, they let it slide and they'll just roll on with it. So at the end of the game, I always like to close up with, I ask the players, okay, was there something that I missed? Do you think that I made a call unfairly? Is there something, do you have some sort of grievance? And I let the players have an opportunity at the end of the game, when it's not going to interrupt anything anymore, to air that grievance and let it be known. And sometimes it generates some interesting conversation on how rules are interpreted or what players could or couldn't have done better, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. You give your players a chance to, bring it up, and I think it's okay for a DM to make any rule they want, and as long as what they're doing, so that this is what your players should be able to expect from you as a DM, is that if you do make a rule change, or if you happen to interpret a rule differently than other people do, as long as you let your group know from now on, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to play it this
Consistency.
way.
Yep.
And you have to, if as long as you maintain consistency, then your players can all go, okay, well, whenever that comes up, then I can expect to have it go just this way because that's what we decided was going to happen. And role play D&D, but any role playing games. We're not really just talking about D&D. That's just the example we always use. But role playing games, storytelling has, there can be a rule book, that's 200 pages thick, and it's still not going to cover everything, right? So as long as you can make an agreement among the 3 to 10 people or however many crazy people you have at your game playing with you, as long as everybody's on the same page, so to speak, then there shouldn't be any problems. You want
Yeah.
to make it run smooth and have fun. Go ahead, Bunny.
I found that one way that I liked to take care of this so that I didn't have as many questions coming up during play is I would make a cheat sheet for all my players, and I would have it set up so, like, say if it's in Fantasy Grounds, I would have like a special story for it that they could easily access for special rules, whether it be like in, say, Fantasy Age for stunts, or ways to apply their skills in Fate, or if, say, it's like in D&D and we have like some alternative rulings or rules that people don't tend to do correctly, I might have a little list of those and how I handle them, and that way it's kind of cut off before it even has to start. And anything that comes up after that, if it can't be taken care of in like 5 minutes or less, I just say, okay, we're going to wing it and I'm going to handle it this way. And then at the end, I discuss it with them. But I've
Wow.
also found that for rulings and stuff, like once I applied them in play and I found like, I don't really like how this feels, even though this is a correct way to do it. And I'll talk to my players afterwards and say, like, how did this feel to you? Like, if the majority of the players like it, I'll just suck it up and deal with it. But if it's something that, like, I just really cannot stand, then I like to make an adjustment. We talk about it and I explain why I'm making the change. And then I also add it to the list, whether it be in the same format as other things, but it helps make things more streamlined. And if people weren't there, they're not suddenly surprised later. And it just clears up a lot of extraneous discussion.
Yeah. And guys, when you're running your games, if you're a DM, that's a great thing to do. What Bunny just said is explain to your players why you are doing the rule you're doing it, or if you're changing something, why you're changing it, and just let them know that's what I'm comfortable with, that's what I think's the most fun, that's what I think's the best, and that's the decision I've made, and that's why we're going to do it. And if you explain to all the players, then at least, even if they disagree with it, they'll be like, okay, well, at least I understand, I've been told this is how it works, and that's when I can expect, if this comes up again every third turn or or once a session in the future or whatever, they'll be down with at least your explanation of it, and it won't freak them out. And I always tell the story of a DM that I used to game with in past years, where he would just rampantly, inconsistently add shit and make shit up that was different every time. And then he would throw in, like, I've never played Pathfinder, but we were playing 5th edition, and he added the flat-footed rule from Pathfinder, and I didn't even know what it was. And then he, and I've said, if you want to play Pathfinder, go play Pathfinder. And it's a different thing when you say, okay, before we start this campaign, I'm bringing in this one rule, and this is how it's going to be, and explain it to the whole group, and they go, okay, we get it. But to just add it on the fly and then change it again 3 sessions later to something else, your players should be able to know. Like before we started the show today, I was saying, whatever RPG system you're doing, there's a rule book, and coming together as a group, whether it's online or in a local place in your town, if you're playing with people that you've never talked to before, and you have never met them or played with them before, the only common ground you have is the rules. And if you're going to change anything, you can't expect people to know what that's going to be unless you explain it to them in advance. So
Hey, Fury, what
Yeah.
did you think of the pre-game questionnaire that I set up for our Lost Minds group?
Oh, I thought it was like super helpful. And I mean, it kind of explains a little bit of your gaming style, although apparently we failed to meet your gaming style since all of us decided to die at that first encounter. I'm
What I
sorry,
really meant
second
was
encounter,
was
really.
the discussion. I'm sorry. What I really meant was the discussion about the rules, the various DMG rules variants that I proposed adding. Anyway, I was fishing to see if you recalled that, but essentially what I was getting at is like what Rob and Bunny were just saying, going through taking advantage of the technology that you have with Discord or with the Fantasy Grounds forum. You can go through and like prepare all that stuff ahead of time, give it to your players so that it's more of a democratic way of approaching it. So instead of just telling your players, hey, this is how I run my game, say, hey, these are the suggested rules changes that I'm proposing that we make. What do you guys think? Is this something that you guys are on board with, something that you're not on board with? That way, in addition to not only players having good expectations of what to expect, they now have a say in how the game is going to get altered. So for one, I'm a DM that likes facing, but if all my players didn't want to play facing, then I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't force player groups into a rule variant that they're not comfortable with. And having that pre-game communication is vital to clear up any ambiguity so that when people do show up for session 1, characters are created, all that stuff, everyone's just focused on the fun and the role play and not worried about all the variants.
True, but you should also keep in mind that people by default want to stick with what's familiar, so they might not even know, right, that they like it a different way. Like I've had for horror games, I've had limited view, like vision or whatever, and so like you can't see behind you. And some people didn't realize how much they enjoyed how much that increased the tension until I did it. Like at first they thought they would hate it and they're like, oh, this is frustrating or whatever. But then once they actually gave it a try in the session, it turned out that they liked it. So I kind of go the thing of letting them know ahead of time and then making them try it at least once before they make a final decision, if it can be implemented kind of seamlessly without disrupting the structure as a whole.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I had a player who was kind of opposed to facing, and then because she was the only one opposed to it, and I said, "So, what's your reservations?" Kind of did what you did, explained it to her a little bit. But yeah, absolutely.
And that leads directly into the next point that I moved up in the list, which is house rules or style of gameplay. Like for me, I absolutely fucking hate facing. I can't stand it. But but if I was going to go to Jake's game and I knew in advance that he was going to use facing, then I could make either the choice to not play or the choice to say, okay, well, he has facing, so that's what I'm going to deal with in his game, which is fine. But as long as you tell your players in advance, then they shouldn't, there should be no problem with, oh, well, I didn't know you were going to do that because you've told them. And I have, I have a document. I mean, my house rules is insane. I mean, it really doesn't, it really isn't anything that's extraordinary or out of place, but I've pretty much thought, after 2 years of gaming online, I've pretty much thought of everything. And so I send people here to go read the house rules, and it's quite a document. I mean, it's a couple pages. And I know that sometimes people don't want to read. Sometimes they're like, "Oh my god, I just want to play. I just want to throw dice. I want to read his fucking novel that he wrote about the house rules." But if you're not willing to do that, and then you're not going to play in my game. I mean, that's the kind of DM I am. I expect people to know how we play, know what the rules are, and not have questions about it unless something comes up that's not covered by that. Then we can talk about it. But my games go pretty smoothly because all my players know, okay, well, this is how he does this. This is how he does ammo recovery. This is how he does multiple shot calls. This is how I know that if I play in Rob's game, I can't have a first level character that has the fly ability. I've got 2 or 3. Oh man, I'm going to run out. It's only been 10 minutes and my voice is going already. But as long as you tell your players what your rules are then they won't be surprised, and they won't be an hour into a game that they've set aside time for and shown up and go, oh, well, you didn't tell me it was going to be all jacked up this way. But yes, if you do tell your players in advance, then there should never be a problem. Did anybody else have any comments about that in particular?
I'm just complimenting you on the quality of that rules document, because that all the topics that you cover in that document all really address two main things: respect for everyone at the table and respect for the game master's time. All of those have some tie back to just like proper table etiquette.
Right, and
I love it.
And I usually, I mean, sometimes with one shots, I will, I'll play with players. Like, for example, next Sunday's game, there's a couple players in it that I've never even met or talked to on any, lengthy basis. But usually, even if I put an LFG or LFP out looking for people to come join one of my games or campaigns, I'll get on Discord or, voice with them, and I'll talk to them for 20 minutes or more just to get to know them a little bit, to know, and I try not to fault people for things that isn't their fault. But, like, for example, if there's somebody who I talk to and they sniff at the end of every sentence, and I'm talking to them, and then every period on any of their sentences is an inhale, then I know I'm not going to say that to them, but I know that that's not going to be something I can take. Or if I get on Discord with somebody and say, hey, I hope you can come to my game and play, and while I'm talking with them for 20 minutes, it's just a dog barking in the background over and over, and it doesn't ever stop, then I know, okay, I can't do it. Rob Toohey doesn't have the personality to be able to handle a dog barking the entire time the person's mic is open in the background. So even though that's not on them to, it's not a personality flaw or anything, it's just a situation that I know I won't be able to take, I will have to tell them, I don't think I can invite you to my game. And so
I think that bleeds good into like just general proper table etiquette as a whole. Like being on time, being present, like trying to avoid distractions, dogs barking, that sort of thing, making sure your audio quality is good.
Yeah, like we're about to talk about that. Yeah, like courteous behavior, and a lot of that, especially, I mean, the average D&D player these days is a 40-year-old person. And you would think that, adults who have lived life for 4 decades would know how to act. But, being on time is important. Being courteous to your other players, and there's many different ways of being courteous. For example,
be present. Like, I think the biggest thing is just to be present, because you're already at a disadvantage with this audio visual thing, using Fantasy Grounds and using Discord or some sort of voice chat. And if you're not present, it's easy to get distracted. It's a lot harder to get distracted when you're sitting around an actual table with pins and dice and minis and things like that. But if you're going to dive into this digital realm of D&D, like, you owe it to yourself and the DM and every other person there who's showed up on time and did everything they were supposed to do to get there on time, to be present in the game.
Yeah, I mean, this can even translate into the kitchen table game as opposed to online. I mean, you guys have all seen it. You're at a game at a game store, or even at your house or someone else's house in your town, and the story's being told by the DM, and maybe you're in a combat situation, or maybe it's between encounters, and somebody pulls out their fucking phone to go on Facebook. No. If your phone comes out, you better be taking a picture of the game and posting it and saying, hey, I'm playing D&D, check it out. But if you're checking your Twitter or your Facebook or calling somebody during the game, no. That's no good, right? I mean, I can't imagine anybody would think that's okay, except for the person who's doing it. And so, I mean, we could make a whole list. I mean, there could be 100 things on the list of, be courteous and be present, pay attention.
Well, even like in the game, like that's fine. That's also good for like out of game stuff. But even when you're in the game, there's good table etiquette. It's like as far as how to be a good player character. Like don't play other people's characters. Also, don't treat the game like it's a solo game. Play the game like other people depend on you in order to succeed.
Yeah.
But like the big thing I see a lot of players doing, and it's especially hard with the push to talk environment, is players playing other people's characters. So for instance, Rob's in a decision making in situation where his character has to decide on something, and then player B just stomping on Rob's voice channel, like telling Rob what to do with his character. Like that's like a big no. That's a huge don't do that.
I agree,
Yeah.
Jake. I ran a practice game, and I was teaching people how to play Fantasy Grounds, and it was a combat class. And the guys who passed away or perished during the game, they were sitting on the sidelines waiting for their turn and to see if they would survive the encounter. Well, while they were doing that, they're giving the players advice. And I said, you guys are dead, so you're not talking. So basically, that's kind of
there's the metagame conversation,
Yes.
right? Like if you're unconscious, you shouldn't be saying anything. The other thing too is
I love you, man.
Oh, R Hammer too. Thanks for the sub sub. Thank you for that. There's a big difference between what Jake is saying, which is don't tell other players how to run their character, but you can, as a cooperative effort, you can say in character during the battle, run across, hey, go to the other side. Let's get flanking on this monster. Go to the opposite side. You can say things like that as your character would say them, but you shouldn't, as a player, tell other players, oh, don't do that, do this. You got to be careful.
That's what I'm referring to. Yeah, I'm not talking about the collaborative storytelling or the combat tactic approach. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about everyone knows this player. Everyone has a player or has had a player in the group or a pickup group who it's not his turn, it's somebody else's turn, and they just are constantly telling other players what to do with their characters.
I just start taking off health every single time they talk on someone else's turn. It's just like, okay, you take 5 damage.
Why am
There
I
you go.
dying? Why don't you shut the fuck up? That's why.
You're
That's
bleeding
funny.
from the mouth.
Yeah, because if they're ruining another person's chance in the spotlight when they were being respectful and giving you your time in the spotlight, like that's not okay with me. Like I'm very harsh on that. I'm like, do it again and see what happens. I just get really cross.
That's good stuff. I like it. You're bleeding from the mouth. That's fine.
Yeah, 'cause I don't like yelling, but I like making my point very clear.
Yeah, well, that's a good way.
Well,
to do it.
one more thing I wanted to mention on that table etiquette is like not playing the game like it's a solo game. This happens, I think, a little bit more rarely, but it still happens. Is where you'll get players who, despite what the group has decided to do or what the most effective approach is, you'll get that player that just doesn't seem to care what the group does and goes off and does their own thing. And I don't know if other people have experienced this, but you can feel the energy of the group and the table just kind of drag when
Yep.
people start doing that. Does anyone else experience that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
started
seen
coming
that.
up with creative ways to deal with it.
I've seen that happen a lot, and the probably the most prevalent example of that is when one or even two members of the party that has 4 or more members in it decide they want to split the party. Well, you guys are all going down that hallway. I'm going to go check over here. And that can just really suck the energy out of a game. Because if that happens and I'm the DM, if I'm a player, I try to say, hey, let's keep the group together. I try to say something in character to make it not happen. But if I'm the DM, I will do things like, are you sure you want to split the party? And then I'll even do the Freddy or Jason thing. I'll whisper into the mic. I'll go, don't split the party. I'll try to even give them like a really blatant hint not to do that. And I'm okay.
My favorite one.
Hold on.
Well,
Let me finish my thought, please.
My
Um,
apologies.
my favorite thing to do is to have the party split themselves, because they're gonna fucking die if they do that, especially if they're in a dungeon or in some situation where there's gonna be NPCs, right? But I will try to, as a DM or a player, keep the group together if I can. But along what Jake's point is about not having it be a solo game, remember that you're part of a group. So if you're a player and you're in a group, you have to try to, get along with everybody in the group, not in terms of friendships, but in terms of cooperation. And if you go and do your own thing, you're not really playing role-playing games. You're playing a video game. You're playing your own thing aside from the other people. So that's just a good way to be courteous as a player, is to discuss with the group. Now, if you want to try to convince everybody to do your thing, that's a different thing. You can absolutely do that. But if everybody's got their mind made up, we're all going west, don't be a fucking ass and say I'm going east. Just don't do it. It's not fun. It doesn't get you anything. And that would just be my recommendation. Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, my apologies, Rob. Wasn't trying to step on you. No, I was going to say my favorite one as of late was I said to the player, I said, so let me get this straight. You're sure that you want to let the rest of your group go off into this cave so that you can try to tie up an unconscious wolf that just mauled off your friend's hand? Is this correct? You want to split the party for that? And the player said yes. So it got a little dicey after that.
I found, for me, my players rarely do that, but I usually give them like a one like near death experience warning when they do things I don't like. But also, just ahead of that, I like running really small parties, so it just makes zero sense for them to split the party, because they're going to end up, like if it's a party of 3, which is my favorite, because they just get so much time to role play more. Like, it doesn't make sense to ever split the party, because you're already a small enough group to reasonably sneak or hurry or travel quickly. And if they do dumb stuff like that in front of NPCs, I have the NPCs question the validity of their choices, because, like, as we're stating, right, in a logical, like, way of developing that situation, that's not the choice that any smart, experienced adventurer would make, right? That's just suicidal. But like, players tend to get in their mind that, like, oh, I'm the hero of the story because I'm a player, and it's like, no, in my game, specifically my games, you are just like everybody else. So don't like view yourself as being invincible. You are not. And I have no qualms about giving you realistic punishments for playing stupid games.
Yeah, and I think you never know what players' personalities are, and are they trying to test you as a DM or see what your reaction is going to be or whatever. But you can kind of tell after you've played a few games with players that they're just being stupid or selfish, or they don't care
Yeah.
about the party. So maybe that's not the player to be in your game. But
I got
would
something for that, Rob.
I would just say, as a general rule, for everybody who's listening, if you're a member of a party in a role-playing game, just think about it. To say you're going to go off by yourself and do something, unless that's a specific thing that the DM knows about and you're trying to accomplish some goal that he or she has given you, it's just not fun to do that. Stay together and play together is my thing. Go ahead, Jake.
What I was going to say is I'm normally on Bunny's school of thinking, in the sense that, like, if I, the DM, have set the expectation and my players have agreed, like, hey, we're going to approach things in a very logical kind of way. Like, you're not any better than this commoner. You just are a little bit better with a sword and have access to better armor than he does. But you still bleed the same way. You still suffer the same way that he potentially could. In those instances, if you come across a player base and you happen to be DMing for a player base that doesn't want that, I think there is a responsibility on the DM to adjust to the player base. So essentially, just basically following the majority, so to speak. So it doesn't really apply so much to like consistent group games or games with player bases that you've had like long running groups. It doesn't really apply. But for DMs who do a lot of pickup games, or DMs who do Adventures Leagues games, adaptability is absolutely key, not just with your innate role playing style, but like how you actually run a game. If like being able to switch from a nitty gritty logical approach to realizing that you're in a group where the players want that more relaxed, either A, heroic, or B, comical, or some sort of combination. You just have to be able to adapt to an overarching play style in addition to like the minutia. Your macro and your micro need to be adaptable is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And if I'm dealing with groups that are more random, which I usually don't like because I like things a certain way and I don't like repeating myself. But if I am, God forbid for these souls, no, I'm just kidding. If I do that, and I have these players that they're not used to me, and I'm playing something more suited for them, the way I handle that situation, instead of being more logical progression and expecting them to use common sense, I instead treat them like they're kindergartners. And when they go away from the group, I then make sure things are going on with the people they left that they are invested in, right? So if they feel like, okay, I need to stay with the group because I'm missing out on this stuff. So like, for example, if the rogue character wanders off and they're going through a dungeon, oh, well, now they just found, because of their good rolls or whatever, they just found like a +1 dagger or whatever. The rogue feels pretty stupid for going off into the other room to go do nothing for no real gain. And you can just guide them in that way. And it's kind of like herding cats. And it does take assuming that players are motivated by very selfish reasons. But it does work very well if you want to take a more passive approach to making them do what you want. I find that works just as well.
So here's just a question for everyone. In general, are these issues new issues as a result of an influx of new players into the digital version of this particular genre, or are these problems that everyone has experienced pre-VTT when everyone played tabletop?
For me, I would say except for like push to talk and things that are uniquely electronic or online stuff, I would say these problems are universal and have been around forever.
I agree.
I agree as well. I just wanted to hear what everyone else thought.
So we're gonna, after this next point, we'll give away a prize. This one should be a short conversation. I don't think there's much to say about it except to say it, and that is commit to your games, whether it's a one-shot or whether it's a campaign or an Adventures League game or whatever it is. You know, I've had many discussions with other DMs about this. Players need to commit to the game. If you say you're going to be there, be there. And campaigns are long. If you join a campaign and it's every Friday night from 6 to 9, you got to put your calendar. You got to make sure you're there 6 to 9 every single Friday. And I've said this to players, and I say this to people that ask my advice, and I say it as kind of a joke, but if you're scheduled to be in my game, you better goddamn be in the fucking hospital if you're not there. Because
Holy
and
crap.
I'm gonna call somebody out by name right now, and he knows who he is. I don't think he's here now to defend himself, but you guys all know, if you watch my channel, Lazy Stooner, I like him. I've been friends with him for over 2 years. And this past Friday, he was not at our game. And the reason he wasn't there is that his birthday was the day prior.
No, it was his
And
friend's birthday. It wasn't even his birthday. It was his friend's birthday.
Oh, he told me it was his birthday. And when I wished him happy birthday, he said thank you. So I thought it was his birthday. But anyway, whether it was his birthday or not, I knew this was coming, Boffrin said. He chose instead on Friday to go get drunk with his friends. Now, I understand, we all have our lives and we all do things, and, D&D and Fantasy Grounds and Rob Toohey is not the only fucking thing that exists on planet Earth. I get it. But if you sign up to play in a game, you should fucking be there, because not only is that disrespectful to me, it's disrespectful to the other 4 people that showed up. So he basically was saying to 5 people, I don't give a shit about you guys, I'm going to go get drunk. And I'm just using him as an example. This has happened many times by many people. I'm sure everybody listening right now has either been that person or seen that happen to them in games at your house, or whatever it was throughout your life. You've seen this happen. And so I'm basically just saying, generally speaking, to every human that can hear my voice, if you're an RPGer and you commit to showing up to play a game, then fucking show up and be there. Don't say you're going to do it and not do it. I just think that's like almost maybe the worst thing you can do is flake out on something that other people have agreed to be there. You're not just flaking out on one person, you're flaking out on a group. So, I mean, I know that's harsh of me to say it that way. You can hear the tone of my voice, but you guys tell me how you feel about that.
As long as they give advanced notice of like that's I prefer, like, for me personally, like, I like to know like a week in advance, but I will accept up to 48 hours before, unless it's an emergency, because then like people can reschedule, find something else to do, or I can find another player. If it's like really short notice and it's for nothing, then I find that kind of inexcusable, and I don't really take flakers in my campaigns. Like one shots, sure, but my friends who I know are flakers and I've told them they're flakers, they know they don't get invited in my campaigns because I can't stand the way that they dedicate themselves to playing. It's like, don't waste my time. I know you're going to waste my time because that's just your personality. So I'm not inviting you.
So here's a question for the DMs who, let's say they have to cross the bridge. How do you deal with a player who either A, is not a good fit for that particular group or that campaign, or is constantly either A, late or not attending games? How do you guys cross that bridge?
In private.
Yeah, in private, and to me, it's case by case. I mean, it depends on how much of an. I mean, I'll give everybody deserves a second chance, right? Is it a pattern? Did they do it more than once? It really just depends. And also, for me, I mean, I'm no Catholic priest, but I also take a look at how remorseful they are. Like in the case of somebody just not showing up, not telling me, they just disappeared. I mean, Stooner did give me 1 hour and 58 minutes notice, so he at least told me he wasn't going to be there. But like, say for some example, I had a game planned. That person's been there 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden they just don't show up with no explanation. I'm going to need to hear what they have to say about that. And if it's not, I was in the hospital, I want to hear, it was unavoidable, my mom's car broke down and I had to go help, whatever it is, I want to hear, I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there, and, I'll do better next time, and I'll be there next week or whatever. But I have had people say to me, dude, why are you so mad? It's just a game. I wasn't there, whatever. And I'm going to tell you, if that comes out of your mouth, we're done. That's it. Not only are you not in my game, I don't know who you are. You don't exist to me as a human being anymore. Because if you don't respect me that much, then it's fucking over. That's just how I feel.
Nice. I've luckily never had anybody tell me that.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say my answer to that question is it also depends. Generally, what I do is I follow the energy of the group. So, for instance, if I can tell that the energy of the group is lagging as a result of a player being late or a player's absence, I address that with the group as a whole. And oftentimes what I find is if you get a group of players who are committed enough, they tend to take care of that player on their own to a degree, where the other players will tell that person like, hey, you need to show up on time, or hey, you missed last week. That's not cool. And then sometimes you get a group of players who are fine with not always starting on time or not always having the same players in attendance. So again, going to that adaptability thing from a DM's point of view is if it's something that your players don't seem to mind, but you do, well, then maybe that's you not fitting in with your players. If it's something that your players don't seem to mind and you just kind of go along with what your players are wanting, then just go with what your players are willing. Go with the acceptability of your player base as opposed to just what you think is a DM. I'm just not saying that's what everyone should do. It's just an option.
To play devil's advocate, though, Like, does it matter what the players are willing to accept, though, if you're the DM, right? You have a certain amount of time that you can spend on this. You have a certain amount of time that you can prep. You have a certain amount of time that you can rectify things before the actual session. And if
Well,
someone
hold on 1 second. I think really what it comes down to is what everyone is wanting at the table. Again, this is about DM and player expectations. So for instance, if there's a group of players who don't mind showing up 15 minutes late and wanting to keep it just really loose and don't really care about the narrative, or what was that guy's name? No. Oh, if they don't care about all those details and you do as the DM, or if the DM cares a lot and the players don't, and that's not jiving with the DM, then that means that's not the right DM for that group. But if the DM doesn't care either and can adapt to that player base, that's the main thing. So if it's all about what the players are coming to. Some players don't care and they just want to relax for a couple of hours away from their wife and kid, and they don't care. Some players are really dead serious and they keep track of how much coin they have and how much it weighs. So it's finding that balance in between the two is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I'm saying the point is, like, for if there is no DM, there is no game. So if players are making it so that the DM cannot do their job, they are not getting what they came for, regardless of what they're accepting or what they're okay with. It's still impacting
I
them
love you, man.
to realize it actively, right? A lot of people don't know like the amount of effort it takes to DM well until they play with a bunch of really bad DMs. And I feel like even if I'm in a relaxed mood, if I say that I'm starting at a certain time, I have like a 15-minute window of acceptability for starting late. And after that, we're starting. Like, it doesn't matter if the people are there or not. It doesn't matter if the players are fine with it. Like, I can come up with other stuff for them to do. But I don't, like, I'm still ending at the same time regardless. I'm not going to let people talk me into doing other things because I'm already taking time out of my day, things that I'm doing, games that I'm preparing for other players who are on time, right? So it's not fair to me as a DM to compromise even if the players are fine with it, is my point. Because not
Yeah,
everybody has all the time.
I agree with that. Like for example, all my players are pretty easygoing. I'm the fucking one that's all tightly wound. Like when he didn't show up on Friday, one of the other players was like, "Oh yeah, I'll play his character for him, and we'll try and kill him, and it'll be fun." And everybody was fine with it. And I'm the one, as the DM who was most upset about it. Other players may have been upset, but they didn't let on that they were. They didn't tell me that they were. But but I just think, as far as like elements of the game being going with the group and what the majority thinks is fine, that's a great thing to discuss. But as far as like courteousness and respect and showing up on time and being present and playing the game and being in good communication with the person who's running the game for you as a favor to you, then you should respect that, and you should not either not show up or tell them an hour before that you're not going to be there, or whatever it is. I just can't really think. That's why I use the example of being in the hospital. That's the only reason I can think of that would be okay with me. Like, I don't want somebody to be hurt. I really don't. But that would be something I would understand. Like, oh, you crashed your car and broke your knee? Well, fuck. No wonder you weren't there. I hope you're doing all right. Let me know if there's anything I can do. But you know what? I was a little tired that day, so I took a nap and I just didn't wake up on time. I'm so sorry. Yeah, no. I
Yeah.
just
If
don't.
I know I'm taking a nap before a session, I let the DM know. I'm like, I'm taking a nap right now, and I should wake up on time. Like, feel free to call me, blow up my phone if it seems like I'm going to be late. I've only been late like once, and I was late by a little bit because some other people ended up not showing up who were supposed to, so they're already waiting, and they had some technical difficulties. So I got
Yeah,
really
so
lucky
that's a
that
good
I had
example. If
naps
you're in
myself.
contact, if you're in communication with your group and you're saying, you're telling them, hey, I might, like, that happens all the time. I get PMs that say, oh, I'm driving home now. I'll be 5 minutes late. That's perfectly fine. You've told me you're not skipping out. You're just gonna be 5 minutes late. I don't have a problem with that at all. That just means you don't get inspiration for that game. I'm fine with it. But not showing up or skipping out, or worse, saying an hour before the game, oh well, it was all happening, but I'm gonna go to McDonald's and buy 4 Big Macs and eat them by the dumpster while I cry. I don't want to hear that. That's not what I'm looking for you to say right before the game.
Well, I've
But
seen.
oh, go ahead. I want to give away. We tried to give away this prize like 15 minutes ago, but go ahead, Leroy. Say your thought, and then we'll give away a prize.
Okay, sorry. No, I was just saying I've had people outright lie to me about why they weren't there, and I've caught them in the lie. So I don't really pursue that when that happens, but it does happen. So when you guys are committing to a game, please make sure that you do. And if you don't think you're going to make it, we'll bring that up in the next point of how to get yourself out of the game.
Yeah, and if you're honest with your DM or with your group, because remember, it's not just the DM; it's the other 4, 5, 6 people in the group that you're basically telling you don't give a crap about their time. If you're honest and say, hey, I really messed this up. I double scheduled myself. I didn't think my dinner with my mom was today. I thought it was tomorrow, and I really just fucked this up bad. I'm so sorry. Then you're going to be forgiven, or you're going to be given another chance. But if you present yourself as the person who was like, you know what, I got this game. Yeah, we play, and I don't care. I don't care about your stupid little game. Fuck you. Then you're not gonna. That's not gonna sit well with me if you do that. But you're right, Jake. This might have turned into like a bitch session before the show. We were
That's
really
exactly
worried.
what I was trying to
we were really
avoid.
worried that it was going to turn
Really
into just like a
trying to
complaint
avoid
session.
that.
But I think it's good though, because expectations means this is what you want from your players, and players have to also be able to tell their DMs prior to any lengthy campaign that you're going to get into for 9 months or a year. Hey, I expect this from the game. Will I be able to get that, or can these certain 2-3 things, is that how you do it, and can I expect that? And then the DM can say, yeah, we do that. That's exactly what we do. Or they can say, no, that we don't really do it that way. So if that's what you're expecting, maybe this isn't the group for you. And then that way there's no harm, there's no foul, there's no wasted time. Nobody has to get their feelings hurt, and you don't get surprised 2 hours into your first session like, oh fuck, I didn't know it was going to be like this.
Drake
so
PD asked an amazing question. He said, so what
Okay.
can a player do to help the DM?
Okay, we're gonna get to that, but we're gonna hold that thought for a second, because I got to give away this prize, because I've been dying to push the start button, which I just did. So this prize that we're gonna give away is Jake's map. The keyword is Akmotu, AKMOTU. You guys have all probably been staring at it on the screen for the last 20 minutes. And Jake, do you want to tell a little bit about what that means? Somebody can get a map that you'll make for them. Do you want to tell them what the parameters are for that?
Yeah, so if you're running a game, or if you're thinking about running a game and you have an idea for a location or a site-based encounter that you want to do, I'm willing to do a 1,000 by 1,000 pixel map. And for Fantasy Grounds, that comes out to about 20 by 20 grid of 50 pixel squares. It'll just be basically the environment, no furnishings. So no beds, no barrels, no boxes, nothing like that. But if you want like a scary cave, or if you want like a tomb, or maybe like a wilderness environment, or I think, what did Nighthawk do? He wanted a religious battle arena. So we got him a battle arena going. So yeah, whatever you guys want to do, just let me know. Whoever wins, we'll get together one-on-one. You'll tell me what your idea is, and then I'll come up with something for you, and it'll be Fantasy Grounds ready. You'll be able to throw it right into your game and start putting pins on it and putting tokens on it and ready to play.
Cool, and thanks Jake for donating that as a prize today. I appreciate that. And so again, guys, if you would like to have a custom-made map by Akmotu, just enter into the chat right now. You got 30 seconds left. Exclamation AKMOTU will get you in the drawing. And we'll draw that out, and then after we draw that out in the next few seconds, we will get to Drake's question, which was a good question, and talk about that. And then we'll probably be giving away at least one more prize before the end of the show, maybe more than one, so stick around for that, everybody. And the countdown timer has run out, so let's draw the winner. That winner is Stobert87. Nice.
All right.
Congratulations, Stobert87.
Yep. So Stobert, if you want to PM Akmotu in my Discord, he'll get with you. If you can't find him or don't know how to PM him, then PM me, because I know you know how to do that. And we'll put you two in touch for that map. And thanks again, Jake, for doing that. So Leroy, do you want to repeat Drake's question?
Okay, so Drake wants to know, how can a player help his DM for their sessions?
How can a player help his DM? Well, I think what he's saying is, and Drake, you can say if I'm not interpreting this right, just let us know. But I think what he's asking is, what steps can he take to make his DM's life easier? And I'm assuming he's not asking, what can he do to help the DM prepare for the game or anything like that, because that would be like spoiler information, and so I'm just going to assume I'm right about that. And I think that depends on the person, and maybe you guys have more opinions about this, but I think the best thing you can do to help your DM is ask them if there's anything you can do for them. Hey, is there anything I can do to make the game easier? Is there anything I can do to help you with other players? Because it really is going to depend. Is it a one shot? Is it a campaign? Is it players that is it a group that the player who's asking that question knows the other players and the DM doesn't know them and it's a new thing? I mean, it could be any number of different situations.
I have a long list of things I would love players to do to help me out.
Same.
Yeah, so I think that just points to ask your DM what you can do to help them, because any players that are in a group where they ask the DM, is there something I can do to make your life easier? They're gonna absolutely love you. You're gonna be their favorite person, and it's only, I mean, if you're willing to help your DM as a player on any level, whatever that might be, that's only going to improve things. That's only going to make things a more positive energy environment and make everybody happier and have more fun. So yeah, that's a great thing to do. If one of my players asked me that, I don't think I would really have an answer for them, except other than the things I preach normally anyway, which is, show up, be on time, pay attention, and have fun. I mean, that's really all I care about. I want everyone to have a good time, and I want everyone to respect everyone else's time and energy. And, if you watch my games and watch my stream, or if you've been in my games and played with me, it's a lot of joking around and a lot of ribbing, and all that's really fun. No one's ever really crossed the line. I can't think of an example where somebody just went way overboard, so that's good. That's never happened. If that did happen, it was me, not my players. But we all really have a good time, and so yeah, if Drake were in my game and said, "Hey Rob, what can I do to help you?" I would say just, show up on time, have fun, be courteous, don't just use common sense, and promote the game if you want, but I really don't ask my players to do anything other than participate as if it was something they liked. You know what I mean? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't want you guys to give your whole entire list because it's going to be individual to you, but do you have any general comments about that?
I agree with you, Rob. I think players showing up on time and participating in the activity is the best thing that they can do. Because if you show up and you show that you're aware and you're engaged and everyone's doing it, because the DM has no choice. It's always the DM's turn. All right. So it falls on the responsibility of the other players in your 3 to 7 minutes of downtime to stay engaged and to stay present, especially if you're sitting in front of a computer.
Yeah. Oh, Drake's asking, can I run one of your NPCs? So that would be a specific DM choice. Sometimes I have the players run NPCs. Sometimes I don't. So I think that's a decision that would be made in the game, and per each DM. But yeah, I don't think there's a general answer to that question. And we were talking about, showing up on time and being present, and so that kind of leads into another point that we talked about before the show started, and that is, what if you have a player who you need to exit the game, or what if a player comes to you and says, I can't do this anymore? I think in both instances, if you're the player who's quitting a game, don't just quit. Don't just walk away unannounced. You should, I mean, I'm not talking about rage quitting like during the session. That's a whole different thing. But if you think that the game you're in, or the session or the campaign that you're in, isn't for you and you want to leave, please let your DM know. Just whether you PM them or or get on voice with them or email them or whatever it is, let your DM know. Say, hey, this isn't really working out for me. I got a couple of reasons why I'm not really having that much fun. Let the DM know for two reasons. One is don't just leave and not show up, because then the DM's wondering, did you in fact get hit by a car and you're in the hospital? They're worried about you. But also, open communication and let the DM know that you're just not having fun, or that it's not for you. And then secondly, let the DM know why. Let the DM learn something from, like, if he or she was doing something that you didn't like, or if the style of play was right, or perhaps you didn't mesh with one or two other people in the group. Be honest and let the DM know why you're not going to be there anymore, so that they can take that information. I mean, I almost sound like if your girlfriend breaks up with you, you always want her to say, well, what was it? Let me learn from the future. What did I do wrong in this relationship? So some people don't like closure. Some people don't want to do that. They just want to leave and move to a different city and never talk to you again. I'm not bitter, but yeah, let the person know what your reasons are. And if you're a DM and you need to kick a player out, be honest with them and say, hey, a couple times when we played, you've been very disruptive, or whatever. I'm just making stuff up, but communicate with people and let them know, because maybe the game wasn't right, or maybe the situation wasn't right for that player to be in your group, but the gaming world deserves everybody to be able to be in it. And maybe my personality doesn't clash with John or Jennifer or Jim or Tina, so they have to go away, but there's no reason they shouldn't go to some other group that maybe is a better fit for them. So just open communication, whether you're the DM or the player, on both sides. Do you guys have comments about that?
Yeah, sure. One of the ways I tend to approach it is because I like to have a very solid line of communication, or I try to, with my DMs. I let them know basically where my baseline is and like how wide or narrow my level of acceptance for certain things is. So, for example, being on time and that kind of thing. As a player, like I really prefer other players to be on time. And if the majority of the party isn't on time, then I'll probably not want to continue. It doesn't matter like how good the DM is, but if the majority of the other players and the DM are fine with it, right? It's not my place to make them like care about timing. And so like I'll step out, because it does make me very anxious and stressed out to not have my schedule operating the way that I need it to do as much stuff as I want to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. I'm certainly like that. Anybody else?
I think it's recognizing those differences in your player base, knowing how to identify a player who is more punctual, or a group of players who are more relaxed in their time constraints, and recognizing within yourself if that's something you're willing to tolerate or not, and knowing if you need to exit or find a new group. And basically how to identify what group you should be in, regardless if you're a player or a DM.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, as much as you may like analyze or look at DMs or other players, you also have to remember that your tastes as a player or as a DM are changing constantly as you grow and experience new things and develop, and as your lifestyle changes. And a lot of people don't remember to make that adjustment, right? People aren't going to be like, oh, I've always enjoyed playing Civ 3 and this is what I'm always going to play. No, people naturally think that their gaming taste and what they want from a game are going to change over time. Like now they might not have 8 hours to sit down and play Civ 3 and they want something a bit more casual. So it's like that. And I feel like a lot of people don't apply that to their tabletop experience.
I think a good gauge is the time expectation. If you talk to a person and you go, so how long would you on average play a D&D session? And they go, maybe like an hour to 2 hours. You can tell that that's more of a casual person. Whereas if you talk to someone and they're down for playing 4 to 6 hours, that's, that takes time. That represents someone who's willing to invest that much time. And I think it's a time investment. If you can find a group of guys, if you can find a group of people who are down to play for the length of time that you want to play, that's a good starting point. Then you can start diving into the minutia of like, well, I like facing. Do you like facing? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
I kind of like using the. Oh, sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
kind of like using the one-shot model to wade through those players that want to join a campaign, because I don't want to play with a bunch of people that are going to half-ass it all the way through the game. If I can kind of get a little bit of a feel for the people that want to play with me personally, that helps me a lot with that character selection and kind of eliminating some of that stuff ahead of time. So if you can run a few sessions and kind of wade through your characters, and then you just private message those people and say, hey, I'd like you to join my campaign, as opposed to just, okay, I have a game, everyone joined. That doesn't help.
That's fine for DMs because it's our purview to do that. We can host 6-7 people if we want. What is a player supposed to do? How is a player supposed to? What if they hop around from one shot to one shot and all the one shots actually never turn into campaigns? How is a player supposed to find a group or sample a group outside of like FGCon or something like that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It would be just the same as, the other way around. You have to join different groups to get the experience, to figure out what type of people and what type of groups you want to play with. And that takes time to develop. That's not something that can happen in one game. I mean, if it does, you're lucky.
I think it's harder for a player to find a good player base than it is for a DM to find a good player base. I think it's much more challenging for the player.
That just happens naturally. Like it happens naturally on a local level. Like I used to play D&D at the game store, and then a couple people said, "Hey, I really like you and how you play, and do you want to come to my house and get in my game and get in my group?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah, great." That just happens organically, and online too.
Wait,
You might be
so
playing.
you go over to strangers' houses just to play D&D. Isn't that
Never
kind of like
follow
weird?
a hippie to a second location? Come on, guys.
Do you mean go to Canada with 7 people that you've never met and then play in the thing?
Oh, yeah, I did that.
But yeah, and then same thing happens online. You meet somebody on Steam, or you meet somebody at FGCon or FG Days or in Fantasy Grounds College, or you just somehow you get in a game one shot with people that you've never played with before, and then conversations start, and maybe they PM you after the game and say, "Hey, you want to come join my group over here?" Or you do that. Maybe you say, "Hey, I really liked how you role played, and I like your style, and I think you're really funny, and do you have any other games, and could I play with you?" And they'll, they can let you down easy, or tell you, "Yeah, come on, come right over." So if you just search around and just sort of be friendly with and courteous and be on time, and all the things we've said, you're going to get invited to games. I mean, every person that's in my Friday campaign right now, I invited. None of them asked me, "Can I be in it?" I said, "Do you want to be in it?" And so they agreed. And why, I don't know, but they did.
So in 2009, I went to Fort Wayne, Indiana for a 4-day thing that Wizards was hosting. It was called D&D Experience. And it was essentially just 12 hours a day of playing D&D with a variety of different players, a variety of different DMs. And it was a really fun and interesting way to get exposed to a significant different variety of play and DMing styles in a very short period of time. Is there anything like that for the equivalent of a VTT community? Do we have something like that outside of FGCon?
Yeah, actually, a lot of different groups, especially like if they have a large amount of DMs, they tend to run West March's servers, and they have tons of different styles of DMs. So while you might be playing in like a continuous, more or less living campaign or unified universe situation, there you can meet tons and tons of different DMs, and that's actually how I met most of the DMs I've played under, is through situations like that.
And we kind of hope that FGC would facilitate that too a little bit.
Yeah, and there's that group what's the name of that place that does that? They were on the Steam Island, or what's it called? Streamer. I can't remember.
That is a West Marches group called Escape to. The name escapes me. No pun intended.
Escape to the Island or something. There is one of those, and it's massive. It's got like 3,000 people in it. And
Sleeper Island.
So you can look that up, Jake. But that's a really good effort online, because and I'm just not in it because I don't have time to do it, because I think it's more for players. But they have like about 30 or 40 DMs, and how they run it is groups get on the calendar and they make their own games. They say who can meet on a Thursday, and then 6 people go, yeah, I can meet on Thursday, and then they basically just do one shots, but it's a West Marches Living campaign that just goes on and on and on and on. And they have rules, and there's like a 50-page document that you can go, and it's really all laid out and explained. So yeah, I don't know that they play 6 or 8 hours at a time. They probably don't do that. But there is a situation where if that's all you want to do is play D&D online, and you know, when you want to eat, sleep, and play D&D online, you can do it. It's there for you. And they actually use Fantasy Grounds for that too.
Are these links in the resource links on FGC, Layron?
Yes, but we actually we had a good relationship with them, but recently we haven't been in touch. So I have to get with you after the show, and we'll talk about that.
What's FGC doing in regards to setting up something similar?
Well, what we're offering is that, especially for new people on the DM or player side, is that they register, they schedule a game, one shot, or a practice game, or even if they're just testing something out, and then they can call in players to play it and just call it a day and keep doing that until they find their group, or until they get practice enough where they're confident to play in like Sleeper Island or in a long-term campaign. And we have practice games, we have a student union. I mean, it's not even being utilized like it could. And that's because we kind of gave the community the idea that, no, we don't play games in here. Well, we do play games, but we just don't advertise campaigns because that's basically excluding a large group of people. So what we want to do is encourage new DMs or even DMs that have been around to go through there and pick from a group of people that sign up and play a few one-shots before they decide how much deeper they want to get into the hobby or what kind of players they want for their table.
That makes logical sense. You bring people in, you run them through a couple of classes, and you give them an environment to get more comfortable with other FGC graduates before they move on to their own campaigns outside of FGC.
Right.
That's right.
And
that makes perfect sense. That sounds like a
FGC
wonderful thing.
is not intended to be a game server like the official Fantasy Grounds Discord is. Like, that's where you can go and put in. FGC has it, but the place you want to go is the Fantasy Grounds
Cheerbits in the
forums.
stream. Thanks for the cheerbits.
Cheerbits, Drake. Cheerbits. Thank you. Oh man, 2462. That's a lot. But you know, Fantasy Grounds official Discord or Fantasy Grounds forums is where you want to search for games to use Fantasy Grounds. Reddit and everything.
Cheerbits. Cheerbits in the stream. Thanks for the cheerbits.
Everybody's doing cheerbits. But yeah, FGC specifically is more a place to learn rather than to sign up for games. But as Layron said, you're going to meet people there. You're going to talk to people. There's like 3,500 people in there. I always tell people at the end of every stream, come to my Discord and meet other like-minded people. And that's the same thing. You get to talking with people. You go in the voice chat. You hang out. And it just all sort of happens organically. You meet people and you end up in games with them. And so, I mean, it's really great.
So here we are. We have you're a player. You've met other players that you like, and you've decided, okay, we're a group of players, and now we need a DM. What can our players expect? What should players expect from DMs? First thing I would say is, yeah, the DM should be prepared for their games.
Yeah,
that would be the number one thing.
Prepare for your games, and I always tell people, ask me for advice. I am by no means, I am a DM. I don't think I'm a very great DM, but I mean, I know how to do it. I don't think I'm the best, but I do use Jeremy Crawford's advice. For those of you that don't know who Jeremy Crawford is, he is the Wizard of the Coast employee who is in charge of maintaining and writing all of the rules that are in the DMG and the Player's Handbook. So he's the guy that runs Sage Advice and all that. And his advice for DMs is to prepare, but to not over prepare. And he even specifies, if you're going to be running a 4-hour session, do not spend more than half that time, 2 hours preparing, and probably not even half that time. And the reason he says that is because unless preparing for the game is your thing and you get off on that and it's so super fun that you like to do that, which there are some DMs that like that, you're going to burn yourself out. So if that's not your, like me, I don't like to prepare. If I could not prepare at all, that's what I would do. But I do prepare, and that's why it makes me mad if people don't show up, because I prepared. But you have to also remember that no matter how much you prepare, no matter how diligently you have everything ready to go, your players are going to go the fucking other way. They're going to go, no, we're not going to go to the castle. We want to go to the swamp, the forest. And, you don't have the forest ready to go yet. But you're not going to, hopefully, if you're a DM worth anything, you're not going to tell your players no. You're going to say, okay, off you go to the forest, and then you can just roll up a random encounter with Tiamat and kill them all, or whatever the hell you're going to do. But yeah, preparing is an important step. And your players should be able to expect from you that you're going to prepare, even if it's just minimal preparation. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do a lot. That's sort of a not exact science. But do the other four of you have particular, tips or tricks or things that you do to prepare or not prepare?
Yep. Do you want to go first, Layron?
I defer to you. I'll let you go first.
Oh, so polite. Okay.
That is so
well,
courteous.
well, actually, I just wrote last week, I think it was, an article kind of about that. But like one thing I feel like is super important for a DM prep, if you don't want to prepare, you need to prepare, right? So for me, I focus on a lot of the world building and setting up how these different areas work. So if I mention it and the players decide, oh, I want to, book it straight for, the Undermountain over there or whatever, and I want to check all this stuff out. Like I already know how that works, right? Because I've already taken some time, done some world building, thought up how this works, how it looks, and the kind of people and culture that's going to be there. I've already written my notes because I over prepare, and I'm not really surprised. And because I also take some time before the session, I also have things that I can convert or switch or apply to whatever they decide to go. So whether they're going and running into a swamp or they're going to the mountains or whatever, I can make it work. And I feel like by preparing, it gives me a lot of freedom. I'm not surprised. I have the answers. And I don't focus necessarily on, oh, I have to have maps all the time. Like I'm down to theater of the mind at any time. But I feel like to do that properly, you have to have a certain amount of preparation to allow your players the most freedom possible.
I use a deterrent table or like a list of things that I have prepared for any game. And basically what they are is an assortment of things to kind of get the players to maybe want to circle back. So like, for instance, they may lose their food. So it doesn't outright kill them. But what it does is it says, crap, we don't have any more supplies to continue. Or maybe they hear the screech of a dragon in the background of wherever they're at, and they said, fuck that, we're not going that way. Or whatever it is, I have this deterrence that will make it to where it's kind of unpopular or very unfruitful to go off course or to make the game more or less a homebrew instead of something that you had prepared in advance.
That's a
that
good
brings
example.
up an interesting question.
Cheerbits in the stream. Thanks for the cheerbits.
Cheerbits. That I was just going to say that's a good example of what she was saying, is that you have the deterrent table, which means you prepared that so that you didn't have to prepare.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great example. Go ahead, Jake. Say what you were going to say.
I was going to say that brings up some interesting points about player agency. Meaning you're treating them like Truman in the Truman Show. They have the illusion of freedom, but in reality, you're going to light the bridge on fire or have them crash into the wall or what have you.
Yep.
As opposed to it's not a definitive school of thought, but some DMs have the school of thought of like full, complete player agency, where it's not really a deterrent table. It's just a different style of approaching the DMing to where the players can go do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. It's like not saying no, it's like maybe,
Yeah, like I always try to be the yes DM if I can. If a player says, can we, then I'll always, if I can, I mean, I think about it first. Like, is this going to totally fuck the entire game? Like, I have to try to figure out a way to get. But most often, I will say yes, you can, and then I'll figure out how to let them do it. But yeah, I think that a lot of that player agency and saying yes or saying maybe or using a deterrence or giving the illusion that they're doing what they want, but really you're railroading them to go a certain place. A lot of that is a case-by-case basis. It depends on the world and the campaign and your style of play and things like
And
that.
how much
But
time you have.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Especially if it's a one shot, right? Like if it's a one shot and you're limited, you almost have to railroad the story, because you got to hit these 4 major points within 2 hours. There's no way you can do it if you let the players wander off and go do 3 random encounters.
Cheerbits.
So
Cheerbits in the
Fancy Grounds
stream.
College,
Thanks for the
cheerbits.
cheerbits.
So I would say less along the lines of expectations, but more along the lines of just general advice. You want to, if you're DMing players, you want to be able to let them do what they want. But part of your preparation can be like, well, what if they decide they want to go over here? What will I do? And you can come up with 2 or 3 ideas, or maybe you get lucky. I got to get a copy of that deterrent table there, and I need that. I love it. But yeah, that's a good thing to be at least ready for. And there's a whole different discussion. We're not going to get into it tonight, but there's a lot of things you can do as a DM to help yourself. Like I've said many times before, I was a comedian and an improv comic, and those skills help me a lot just to be able to roll with the flow and make shit up as you go. Or even if you're not making stuff up necessarily, like adding story points, but just rolling with the punches. Like your players say, oh, we're going to climb down this cliff into the hole, and there's nothing down there, but you want to let them do it and then just fucking make shit up, like what's down there. But that can be a whole nother show about improv and stuff like that. Before we move on, let's give away another prize. This is going to be an item of mine from the DM's Guild. I'm going to go ahead and say that it can be anything. So anything with my name on it, whether it's a package, whether it's a single item, whether it is something I did with another author. Most recent titles I've published are Unknown Whom 2. Also, I think Jeff Stevens, the Tasha's, what was that called? The fucking Kiss? I don't know. DM's Guild. I can't even remember what it is now. Anyway, I was just gonna kind of showcase the most recent couple titles that I published, and now I'm really, because it all runs. I have 100 things on the DM's Guild, literally like 95, and it all runs together. What they are, but what was the one I was trying to think of here? Let's see, date added. It is called The Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss, and that was written by Jeff Stevens and Remley Farr. And Walking Dude and I did that, and I'm going to say that Walking Dude did like 95% of the work. But yeah, so those are just the most recent things. But anything that I have on the DM's Guild that you want, you can get if you win this. And once again, I will mention that if you do win the prize, it is your prize. We don't like to have you guys go, oh, I've already got all your stuff, so give it to someone else. No, don't enter it unless you want to win, because if you win, you're winning. That's how it is. So we got like a minute left on that, 40 seconds actually, and then I will draw a winner and we will continue on.
Cheerbits. Cheerbits in the stream.
Lady
Thanks
Shell,
for the cheerbits.
thanks for the cheerbits. Also, Lady Shell, I think you walked away from the keyboard, so I didn't say it, but since you're back, thanks for the sub as well. Thanks for the resub. So we'll draw this prize and then we'll continue on with our discussion. And we're probably gonna get to 2 hours tonight. I don't mind because this is a great things for people to hear and talk about and ask questions about. So hopefully you guys don't mind going a little longer.
That is perfectly fine with me.
I will draw a winner, and the winner is Aralat 451.
Cool.
Good, congrats. So Aralat, you know what to do. You PM me in Discord and let me know that you won an item, and I need your DM's Guild email and which item you would like to have. And let me just make a note of that real quick. And at the end of the show, I will give away another item from the DM's Guild that is from me. So hang out till the end, everybody, and we'll give away another one. So we talked about player agency, and we sort of talked about tips and tricks a little bit and wise decisions while we were discussing that. And this really means You know, I mean, that could be actually a whole show on its own, like tips and tricks. A lot about what I said about improv, but also wise decisions regarding. And I think I'm gonna let Jake talk a little bit about this when I finish here. But for me, wise decisions is not only a decision that is prudent at the time you make it, but that will also set up precedent or be wise for the rest of the campaign if you can see that far into the future. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. But Jake, did you want to talk a little bit about what you meant by that before the show? You were the one that mentioned that, yeah?
Yeah, so as far as this actually falls more on the players, what they can expect from themselves. So each player at the group or each player at the table needs to be able to expect other players to also make wise decisions relating to their character. So it goes back to what we talked about before about like not being selfish, staying aware, and not making decisions that are going to harm the group. Don't shout shillelagh when the rest of the group is trying to sneak into the watchtower. You're fucking everyone over if you do that shit. But
shillelagh! Oh shit, that's funny.
Yeah, and also those wise decisions go into paying attention to DM cues. All right, the DM's not going to hold your hand and say, "Hey, don't do that," because you're going to attract the attention of the guard. The DM's going to say, "Are you sure?" Make wise decisions based on if the DM's questioning you. Chances are that decision's not wise.
Right. Yeah, that happens. And I know DMs. See, this is sort of a side thought, but I know DMs that ask you, "Are you sure?" Even if it's not gonna mess anything up, they just do it to fuck with you, which is funny. Are you sure? And then players go, "Oh my god, he's asking." Yes, I'm sure. But yeah,
I
that's a
also
good.
sometimes. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I sometimes also ask if I feel like they didn't actually properly understand the situation that's going on. And I try to encourage them to ask more questions, whether it need to be out of character or in character, so that they're actually understanding and acting within the scope of their character, especially if they're acting in a way that seems out of character for them. I also make sure to ask them if they're sure, so that they actually
Yeah.
think about what would my character be doing. Because some people, they just get kind of outside of themselves and they're just like, oh, well, this is obviously what we need to be doing. And it's like, is that really the logical choice for your character?
Yeah, and sometimes the players get lost in the narrative, and they need to get reaffirmed by the DM is exactly what is happening. So I agree with you, Bunny. Yeah, if a player seems like they're doing something that's out of the norm for them, like I re-describe the scenario, make sure they're 100% clear on what's happening, and then like, are you really sure you want to do that?
Cool. All right. So I think we pretty much already talked about this. Let me shade that. So,
Cheerbits. Cheerbits in the
Fantasy
stream.
Grounds
Thanks for the
College,
cheerbits.
Thank you again, Fantasy Grounds College, everybody. FGC, you know what the deal is. And by the way, guys, if you do have questions in the chat, just type them in there. We'll try and get to them. We usually are pretty good about somebody, Furied or Leroon will stop me and say, "Hey, there's a question." So mechanical play versus role play. This is a thing we were talking about before the show, and this is more, as far as expectations. DMs should definitely tell players that are going to be in a long-term campaign, or even if it's a one-shot, what their concentration is. Like for me personally, I'll say to people, my concentration is 80-20 combat to roleplay, and perhaps that's a conservative estimate. It might be more 90-10 for me. So in my games and in my campaigns, I absolutely allow players to roleplay, and if they do, I roll with it and let them, do as much as they want to do. But it's not a concentration or a requirement for me. I really love, Fantasy Grounds because it's automated. I love to play online, and I love to roll dice, and I love to see dice rolled, and I love to do the math and the effects in the combat tracker. Obviously, one of the things that I spend most of my time on every day is the coding packages and refining and adding and doing different things for that. So I'm very much a mechanics guy and very much not a role player. per se, and even though I was a comedian and I have the skill set to do it, I don't use voices and I don't say, a tankard of ale for all and well-met traveler. You're not going to see me doing that very much. If I get a wild hair up my ass, you might see me do it, but usually not. But if the players want to do it, I'm okay with it. But I set that expectation with people. I say, if you come to my game, just realize that there's not going to be a lot of tankard of ale talk, and it's going to be more about, did I hit or did I miss? And so as long as you're clear with your group, and as long as players know that, then they're not going to be, like we said before, they're not going to get into your game and 2 hours is going to go by and they're going, oh my God, this sucks. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. So setting that expectation as a DM is very important. And if you're a player, you should ask your DM, hey, when we play, do you allow this? Do you allow that? How does it go? Find out. If you don't know that person, if you've never seen them or played in a game or know people that have played with your DM, she might do something different than what you want her to do. And, you just need to have that open communication. So did any of the other four of you have specific things you want to say about that?
I'll
Yep.
let Jake go.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, so my big thing with the mechanical play versus role play, I agree with Rob that, everyone coming to the table needs to agree. Like, we're fine with talking in stats and numbers, or, to keep everyone immersed, we kind of we don't have to necessarily talk in character, but we at least want to do third person role playing, which for those of you who may not know is you speak on behalf of your character. My rogue walks up to the bard and asks him, he flips him a coin and asks him to sing a song, as opposed to actually acting that out in character. Aye, yay, well met, bard. Can you play me a quiet minstrel, please, if I exchange some coin with you? You don't have to do that. You can speak in third person. But there are those players out there who don't care about any of that, and they just want to roll dice and see if it hits or misses. And players can perfectly well say, my character makes an insight check. So in my games, characters aren't allowed to make insight checks. Your character doesn't know what an insight check is. But if you want to discern whether or not the shopkeep is withholding something from you, that is completely allowable. And then the DM will request that you make an insight check. So it's really like establishing that expectation.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of maybe newer players might fall into that because they don't know better, but as a DM you should, let your group know, or let a player within your group know whether you accept that or not. Some DMs are okay with that. Some people say the player might be out in front scouting in front of the party, and they'll say to the DM, I'm going to make a stealth check to see if I can make it quietly down the hall. And some DMs, hashtag bad DMs, might allow that, but as a DM myself, I would never allow a player to tell me what skill check they're going to make. As Jake said, I would say your player doesn't know what a stealth check is. What you should be saying to me is, I'd like to try to sneak quietly down the hallway. Then I'll tell you, make an athletics check. And you'll say, why am I not making a stealth check? And I'll say, because you need to see if you can get over the pit you just stepped in. So, players make too many assumptions about what's happening in the game. And as a player, you should say what you want to do as your character and not use the mechanics as a game, of the game, I mean. And as a DM, you should let your players know, I'm okay if you say you want to make a skill check. I'm okay with that. Or you should tell your players, no, don't tell me what you're going to roll. Tell me what you're going to do. So it really depends on the style of the group and, who's okay with what. But again, setting the expectation at the beginning and communicating to everyone, because that way everyone in the group's going to do it the same way and it'll be consistent. And, nobody should have a question about how that's supposed to go. And then once you get through the kinks of that, somebody might make a mistake once or twice. That's perfectly fine. You just remind them, hey, we don't say what we're going to do as far as the rolling. We say what we're going to do as far as the action. And oh, yeah, I forgot. Sorry about that. And you just move on. As long as everybody's on the same wavelength and the same mental process, your games will run smoother and they'll be a lot more fun because you won't have to stop and think about that.
I got a question for all three of you.
Isn't
And
there
I hope
four of
you
us?
got me 3 different answers. I don't know if Fury is still here.
Is Fury not here?
Oh, I'm here. No, I'm here.
Okay. Anyhow, okay, all 4 of you. Okay, so I'm a player, and I'm a rogue, and I'm going down the hallway, and I don't really describe what I'm doing. I just ask the DM or others. Let's say, yeah. So I'm gonna roll a stealth check, and I want to go up to this player and sneak up behind them, and then they'd expect their roll to matter. So how do you handle that guy when he says, "Well, am I sneaking?" So Rob, how do you handle that guy? Everyone's
more-
gonna be different.
I more want to say, were you not just listening to the last 3 minutes of me talking? If a player said to me they're going to roll a stealth check, I would say, no, you're going to tell me what you want to do. And then if they say, well, I want to sneak up behind the guy and try to, put my hand over his mouth and shut him up or whatever, then I would say, okay, and I would give him the 1, 2, or 3 appropriate skill checks to accomplish that. But my main thing I would do is I would stress to that player, you don't tell me what skill checks you're going to roll. I tell you what skill checks you're going to roll. You tell me as your character what you want to do. That's how I would handle it.
Okay, how about you, Akmotu?
So in this instance, if I feel that a player has an intent but hasn't vocalized that intent fully, if they're speaking of mechanics, I try to wrangle them back into character. And if they're in character and they still haven't expressed that intent, I try to coax it out of them. And one of the easiest things to do is I ask the player, forget time and actions and how many things you can do in a certain amount of time. What is it that you're trying to do? You're here now. What is the optimal situation or scenario that what are you hoping for in all of this? You want this guy incapacitated and not posing a threat to your party moving along the path, right? That's what you want. How do you want to do that? Tell me specifically. Do you want to stab him? Do you want to choke him? If the player is not good at expressing it, I try to coax it out of them by giving them options that make logical sense. That way it feels suggestive, but it's not me telling the player what to do. And if it is enough to inspire them and they come up with something, well, actually, I want to climb up this and go around it, that's great, because at least it got them to the point to talk in character and be more specific.
How about you, Bunny?
I have mixed feelings about this, but it's most. Rob.
What the fuck, Rob?
I'm just fucking around.
Because I sometimes the DMs might not have read all of the books that I have on 5e. For example, like say if they haven't read Xanathar's Guide to Everything, they might not remember that if you have Arcana proficiency, you can use Arcana as a reaction, right, to figure out what spell the enemy is doing, right?
Mhm.
And there are situations that come up around that or like that a lot. Like not all DMs, especially if it's a one shot, right? They don't have your sheet memorized. They don't remember what you're capable with or what you're studying or like aspects of your character background. And so I might like to remind them if they don't catch on when I say it in characterly the first time.
Fair enough. How about you, Fury? Have you been in that situation where you need to know if you're sneaking so you can do a sneak attack?
Well, I've actually started playing a game with Jake on Tuesdays, so I'm trying to get into the habit of saying, this is my intent. What can I do to make myself succeed at this? So he's kind of breaking me of some bad habits, some bad player habits.
Cool.
Beth Ann in the chat says, as a DM, sometimes you don't want them to fail or roll, so you don't ask them to roll. It's just too cool to fail, or they will not be able to progress the plot. So that's a good point too. Sometimes,
Yeah.
There should
like I've seen DMs do where the player will say, I want to jump the pit, and when I get to the other side, I want to grab onto the barrel and throw it into the pit. And I've seen DMs say, yeah, you do that. They don't even ask for a roll. They just say, yeah, that's what happens. And so,
Cool.
it can be that way as well, where you just allow players, sometimes making a roll is going to do one of two things. Give the player a feeling, a sense of, you know, immersion and participation in the game mechanics wise, or also give them a chance to screw it up and maybe it doesn't go the way they plan. But if they're asking to do a simple action and it's going to help the story and make everybody happy, you might just tell them, yeah, that's what happens. And the player's going to go, oh my God, that's it. I don't have to make a roll. And everybody laughs and it's a good time. So it really just depends.
I always tell my players the most powerful tool, weapon, artifact, item they could ever possess is their player's actual voice, the words that they use to describe their actions. If you go into this lengthy description about what you're doing and there are no holes, there are you've described it so fucking well, there's no way that could possibly fail, then guess what? You've just circumvented the need for a roll. But if all you say is, I want to sneak up and kill that guard, you're at the mercy of the random roll because you weren't descriptive enough. So a roll needs to come in because of your lack of input. But if you provide massive amounts of fucking input, I don't want to say a good DM, a DM could dictate that, you know what, no roll is needed because you described it so well.
I have mixed feelings on that. Just because it's so arbitrary, I don't, like, as a player, if I go into a game, I don't assume that role playing well is going to get me anything. That's me taking a personal choice and enjoying the game the way I want to enjoy it. I mean, it's nice if I do, but I don't expect it because I've been burned so many times and like doing role play and then not getting anything out of it except like wasting my voice because it technically didn't mean anything in the end, right? So
that's why I didn't want to say bad DMs, but a DM should. But I'll go off and say it. A bad DM. Bad DMs don't reward.
Well, and again, it all comes down to style of play and the way that DM runs their game, and I mean that's the beauty of it, right? Is it's all different. I mean, you could play the same module or the same written material with 3 or 4 different DMs and have it all turn out different each time you do it, just because of the style and the way that the things were described and played and how players react, and I mean, it's just a different thing.
Well, if you also paint yourself into a corner where you've made it to where, if players fail a roll, that's like it puts an end to the adventure. Well, then that is poor preparation on the DM's part. I always lean on the idea of success at a cost. So you're not rolling to see whether or not you're going to find the secret door. You're going to find the secret door. What you're rolling for is how long it takes you. Because if it takes you forever, guess what? That patrolling party is going to come up on you. And even though you're a little shy on resources, because it took you too long to find that fucking door, now you're going to be up against something even harder. But if you roll well, guess what? That door was real easy to find. So it's not success or failure. It's success at how much cost.
That's a valid way to approach it. Actually, the one thing I wanted to mention is, Rob, I'm actually kind of surprised that you feel that way, since, like, in my mind, when people are like, oh yeah, I'm a mechanical DM, I expect them to like be like, okay, well, this is the basic gist of what I'm doing, right? So, like, for example, I would say, I'm going to use like an example somewhat from Layron Session because that's the freshest one in my mind. Like, say if I wanted to do a historical check using my knowledge of the occult because I have a book, right? I would say that instead of say, like, may I do an historical check because blah, 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 because that's like what my character's strong is. I'm not going to like necessarily role play it if I feel like my DM is a mechanical DM, right? So I'm actually kind of surprised that you don't like your players telling you just flat out what they want to roll. Like,
I think it's because they could just simply say, I want to look in my book. Is there anything in my book that gives me any clue to this? Because that's really what they want.
I'm struggling because I don't know how to explain to you why that bothers me when I follow that up with I'm such a mechanics guy. But,
yeah, that's mostly the reason.
I think in order to clear that up is I don't like players telling me how to DM. I'm the DM. You want to DM? Then you start a game and I'll come play in your game and you can tell me how to DM. So I just really have an aversion to people saying I'm going to make blank skill roll. I don't want you to tell me that. I want you to tell me what it is your goal is. And then the reason is, like I said before, like a player might, a perfect example is the one I gave before, where the player says, I'm going to make a stealth roll to sneak down the hall. And then I'll alter their pattern of thinking by saying, no, don't tell me the roll you're going to make. Tell me what it is your goal is. What do you want to try to do? And they'll say, well, I want to sneak down the hall. And then I say, okay, roll a dexterity saving throw to avoid the pit you just stepped on. Because they don't know what I know. So they can't tell me the skill
Right.
rolls they want to make, right? It's got less to do with role playing
Well,
and more
yeah.
about
I think
the environment.
there's a
But
lot
other-
of DM responsibility on promoting empathy. If you can promote character empathy with your players, it allows them, it's what I like to call role-playing light. You don't have to be your character, but just at least put yourself enough in that situation where you can say, like, oh, I want to check my book, or I want to move as quietly as I can down this hall, that sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
as players get more used to it, it's more muscle memory, and they stop thinking about the mechanics of, I want to roll a stealth check, I want to roll an intimidation check. It gets them out of that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. But as a more specific question for Rob, would it change your opinion if they were saying, may I roll for stealth as I go down the hallway checking for traps, because I don't want to alert anybody that's coming? Like, if they add on their intent after they ask if they may make a roll while, like, to go with what they're doing, does that change your interpretation of that? Out of
It does
curiosity.
not.
Interesting.
I'm so rigid in that thinking. I never want, you know, that list of 20 skills, I never want to hear those words come out of a player's mouth. I don't want to hear arcana, I don't want to hear history, I don't want to hear intimidation, I don't want to hear stealth, I don't want to hear any of those words, because
Just to get technical, out of a character's mouth.
out of a player's mouth. I don't want to hear the player say, I want to do a stealth check. I don't want to hear it. I want to hear, I'm going to try to sneak down the hall. I want to hear, I'd like to know if I can garner information from my spell book. I'd like to hear, I'm going to try to tell this guy, you know, I want to try to browbeat this guy into submission, or what, you know, I want to hear the action. I don't want to hear the mechanics of it. So I know that's confusing to hear me say I'm such a mechanics guy, I like dice rolls and everything, but I guess the hair stands up on the back of my neck when I hear a player say, parenthetical, I've read the player's handbook and I know all these rules, and so now I'm going to try to manipulate the game by telling you I want to unparenthetical roll a stealth check. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's just
No,
my
I mean,
mindset.
it makes sense. I mean, I'm very strict on that when I'm doing my roleplay games, but if I'm doing like my casual, like more just dungeon delve and they're just going through doing whatever, like I can't be fussed about it either which way, how they say it, because I'm not really immersed. I really don't care what they think their character is doing too much if it's just a mechanical dungeon delve and they're just, you know, playing around or doing whatever.
Yeah.
Like I'm
And
already
I
kind
rarely
of
have to
roleplay
say
checked
it
out.
to somebody more than twice. And I'm not that hard. I don't like snap at them or anything. I just say, like, if they say, "Oh, I want to make a stealth roll to see if I successfully go down the hall," I'll say to them, "Oh yeah, don't tell me the roll you're going to make. Tell me what your goal is. Tell me what your character's trying to do." And I'll say that to them once or twice, and then usually that trains the player into then in the future sort of saying it to me in that mindset. And I've rarely had to tell somebody more than twice to sort of train them to get them to do that. And
Well,
that's
not only
really
that, but it propagates good players for other groups and other DMs, because if we can establish those habits with players within our own groups and those players go off to other groups, then they spread it to their groups. And before you know it, you have an entire community of role players role playing.
Yeah.
Well, but doesn't that kind of ignore the fact that it doesn't allow DMs who are new to have like any sort of not knowing, right? Because like sometimes a new DM, right, they're going to allow that because they honestly don't know all of the skills. They don't have it memorized. So like, oh yeah, there is a, deception skill. You're right. Okay,
Well,
let's go
that's
do
when
that.
we lean back on the normal process. So if a new DM is approaching a group of players and they know he's a new DM, again, you don't talk rules at the table. So if, for instance, somebody says, "Hey, I want to sneak down this hall," and the DM, doing the best as he knows, says, "Okay, give me an Arcana check." And the rogue does that and then fails the stealth check, and then people end up dying as a result. The players are supposed to bring that up at the end of the game, like we've all talked about. And at the end of the game, why did you have me roll an Arcana check? And that's when we find out
Ooh.
the DM didn't know exactly what they were doing. And then you approach it like that. That's
I
if we're
didn't
talking about
tolerate
sticking to these
that.
talking points we talked about before, then that's what you do.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and let me
I
just
just wouldn't
reiterate
want to
that
let something going on like that.
this is my opinion. This is the way I do it. I'm not saying that's the one and only way to do it. As I
Yeah.
said before, some DMs might allow it, and some DMs might only want to have the nomenclature of what's being said by all the players be the specific names of the stuff in the book because it's easier for them to categorize in their mind. That's perfectly fine. I just don't want my players to do it
No, yeah,
because
that's fair.
I think it's because the reason I give that one example that I've said now twice about the guy wanting to make a stealth check, but then it's a pit and instead is because that's happened to me. The guy said, "I want to make a stealth check," and I just said, "Well, you can't." And he goes, "Well, why can't I?" And I go, "Because you can't go down the hall right now." And he goes, "Well, is there anything blocking me?" No. And so it devolved into this thing where I had to basically spoiler alert and explain to the guy, the reason I'm not letting you do that is because there's a pit there and a stealth check is going to fucking help you. So don't tell me you want to do a stealth check. Tell me what you want to do and I'll tell you what happens. And that's what happened to
Oh.
me, and more than once. And so that's when I decided, because when I first started DMing, I actually said to my players, which skill check do you want to do? Which one are you using? Are you using athletics or are you using acrobatics? And I had the player tell me. And then I evolved from that because all these fucked up situations kept happening. And I'm like, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell my players, tell me what your goal is. Tell me what your guy's doing. How's she moving? What is her attitude about what she wants to accomplish? And then I will decide based on the environment that the player has no idea about what's going to happen. So that's just how that came about. But again,
And a
that's just my
simple
style, and other DMs might not care about that.
No,
and a
that's
simple
fair.
fix to that is your character doesn't know what an athletics check is. Your character doesn't know what a stealth check is. That's the simple, easy,
Yeah,
keep
that's
it light, fix
right.
it, and
That's a
Guess
quick
I'm
fix.
just like really new school because if my player asked for a check they wouldn't reasonably be able to do, I'd be like, okay, go ahead and roll. Like it's no skin off my back. I just continue on with what I'm doing. Them rolling the die has no impact on what I'm going to be doing as a DM for the most part, right?
it
So I
should
let
though.
them go
It
think.
should.
Yeah,
And I
It
explain
should.
after. No, I'm saying it will do something, but it's just like, say, like, okay, if they want to go and do a stealth check, right? And they, like, let's take a situation where they could stealth, right? And they make a stealth check. They won't know if that stealth check is successful or not until they finish going past and they realize, oh, yeah, there were people there, right? So, by the same rules, if they decide to sneak and they can't sneak, they're only going to know that it doesn't matter if they're sneaking once they fall into the trap. So I'm not going to say like, oh, you can't roll it. I'm going to let them and then say, as you go, blah, 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 you fall into this trap, blah, blah, blah. So their stealth check didn't matter, right?
Well,
So that's how
see,
I handle
and
it.
therein
I
lies
see
the
what I see what
problem.
you're saying. Yeah, but what the reason that didn't work for me is because I would do that. Like the player would say, "I'm gonna make a stealth check." Okay, go ahead. And then they would say, "Well, did I pass or not?" And then I would be like, "Well, you don't know yet." And they're like, "Well,
Yeah, I
so
just
can
don't
I
tell
go?"
them ever.
And it got. But I mean, players will ask you if you. So here's the basic. It's almost human nature. It's got nothing to do with role playing. It's just human nature. If you let a person ask you, if you let a person do something, and you allow them to ask you questions, they're going to take that opportunity. Whereas what you want to do is you just want to move the turn ahead. You want to move the game forward. You want to keep
So
it
what's worked
rolling.
for me for a significant amount of time. Let's look at Rob's scenario as an example. All right. There's a 10-foot wide hallway. There's a pit. There's a group. There's a rogue out front scouting. Okay. Let's say we're doing it in a perfect world where everyone's doing exactly what they're supposed to do. The rogue's going to say, okay, I want to move up the hallway slowly so as not to draw attention to myself. Okay. That seems like a pretty reasonable role play explanation of I want to make a stealth check. So in this instance, the DM, knowing the scenario, would say, let's go ahead and get all the mechanics out of the way first. Okay. We know there's a trap. We know that his passive perception isn't high enough to see it. And we know that his stealth check is irrelevant because there's nothing to hide from. But to not remove player agency and to give them that interactive element that they're wanting, you allow them to make all the series of rolls that they need. Give them an active perception, give them a stealth check if you want, and even give them something else. Give them a superfluous roll just so that they think something is happening, because something is happening. There is a danger element there, and it's your responsibility as the DM to transcribe that through these mechanics. So once you get all the rolls done and you know the results of all the possible things that are going to take place based on what the character already said that they intended to do, all right, you have that intention to use as a guideline of what rolls to make. You make all your rolls. Then once you get all the result, you provide it back to them in one smooth narrative. Okay, so you start moving down the hallway and you're taking your time. You're making sure that you're nice and quiet. You're even breathing with your mouth wide open so that nobody can hear you. And as you're coming up, you feel the floor underneath you give way and you start to tip forward a little bit. But luckily, you're able to kick that back leg, turn around, flip, and grab onto the edge just as the false floor crumbles beneath your feet into a massive 10-foot pit. So what happened he did a stealth, irrelevant, did a perception, failed, did a dexterity saving throw, passed it, and then bam, there you go. You got all your mechanics all done at once, and then to the player, it's just a nice narrative. You're not, okay, give me a stealth. Okay, you move down the hall. Now give me a perception. Okay, you failed that. Now give me a dexterity saving throw. Okay, so you found a pit, but you've managed it. There's a difference. If you go mechanics narrative, it's real choppy. But if you get the intent from the player to start, you have a guideline to what roles you need from the character. The character makes all of the rolls, doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's just rolling a bunch of dice, so the player's having a fun time. And then you have all the results and provide a nice, smooth narrative.
Well put. That's why I like the dice tower for that reason.
Yeah, they're saying in the chat the dice tower. That's great for that. So you can let players know they don't know what they rolled, and that's harder to. The dice tower is actually really good because in a kitchen table scenario, it's harder to accomplish because players are either going to make their own rolls and then they'll see the result. They might not know what the DC is, but they'll see the result. And then if the DM rolls that for them behind the DM screen, players feel, oh well, I didn't get to roll my own thing, so I have less.
So my little rule of thumb on that is that if the roll is something physical that everyone can see or hear or like sense, then it's public. But if it's something that takes place inside the mind of someone else or themselves, then it's always dice tower.
It's a good way to look at it.
So for instance, an athletics check to clear a pit, that's public. Everyone can see how well a character did or did not do on that. But trying to discern whether the shopkeep is lying to you, that's something that takes place in your head. You have no idea.
Yeah, that's a good, I like that. I never considered that.
I basically use it for degrees of success or failure. So if let's say you needed to roll a 12 or higher, if your player rolls above a 12 by a certain X amount of a degree, then I will make the results a little bit more extravagant as opposed to, oh, you made it or, oh, you failed. So if you have that dynamic, it helps your storytelling narrative as to how they rolled as opposed to just saying pass or fail.
Well, here's the thing. You can completely remove the responsibility of the success or failure based on the player. So if you have intent from the player and the player succeeds, you don't have to describe shit. You already know what the player's intent is, and you tell the player, okay, how did this happen? So for instance, the common thing is a player kills a monster, okay? You can't just say, okay, he hit and he's dead. That's one way you can do it. But if the player striking the killing blow is the one that does it, I go, okay, how does he die? You describe to me, how does he die? How well do you succeed at this thing that you're trying to do? And if it's that good, let the player describe it and then run with that. So if the player describes it, that, let's say, for instance, they're trying to deceive a queen into giving them the keys to the coffer. And in this instance, the bard is trying to deceive the queen. So based on what the bard says, I said, okay, give me a deception roll. He doesn't know if it's successful or not. It's in the dice tower, but it's, let's say, a 22. I tell the bard, okay, what do you want from her? She's willing to give you anything you want right now, but just one thing. What is it that you want from her the most? And then it allows the player to provide that input.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get long-winded. Thanks, guys, for putting up with me.
So, actually, a lot of what we're talking about now has to do with DM styles, different mechanics, different role-playing aspects, group dynamics, player choices, and so our next subject thing was picking campaigns and players that match your skill set. So, Jake, I think before the show you talked about Dragon Heist. I don't remember what you were going to say, but before you do, this has to do with, again, it's all about expectations and communication. So whether you're a DM or a player, before you start a group, one shot might not be that big a deal because it's a couple hours out of your life and then it's over. But especially if it's a campaign, you need to make sure that you have set parameters and have all your questions answered and have all your concerns met and talked about before you start a campaign that might be 6, 9, 12 months, even longer with people. Jake, did you want to, I just wrote Dragon Heist example, but I don't remember what that means.
Okay, so essentially what I was trying to get at is if you're a DM, you want to make sure that you're attracting the appropriate audience for the type of game that you're hoping to run. And if you're a player, you're wanting to show up at the right party. Okay, so for example, Dragon Heist is a very urban-based adventure. Okay, it takes place in Waterdeep. You're not going on long treks through mountains and swamps and hills and shit. Okay, so if you're a player that wants to do that stuff, you want to make sure that you're getting in with a game that offers that. So not only are you attempting to find DMs and players that match your style, but they're also actually running the type of game that you want to play.
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is that kind of leads into the next point, which is.
Well, can I comment further?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. So, one thing that I've always made to do, like, so I get the players that I want, is I make sure to almost have an interview-esque session with them after I've already played with them before, either as a player or as their DM in like a one-shot or some low tension setting that's more casual. And I'll actually kind of give it like them an interview question because I find out a lot of players don't know what they want, right? Or they don't necessarily know what they like or what they dislike because they might not have sat down and thought about it and really computed, the reason why I didn't like that campaign that I was just in is because, the DM never let me really talk, or he kept God moding me and telling me what I'm doing, even though I didn't do anything yet. Like, right? And they don't really have time. Like, a lot of people don't take time to assess why it is that their past sessions or games didn't work out and what they didn't like and what they like. And so I find that asking them questions instead of it being like, oh yeah, like, do you like combat more or role play more? Like, that's just too general and it's too leading, right? So they'll just give you the answer that they think you want to hear, even if they don't realize it. And instead I ask them, so what was the thing that you enjoyed most in your last session? And then I hear about like, oh yeah, we had this epic fight with a dragon, blah, blah, blah. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, they like combat a lot and they like combat that pays off, that has high stakes, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm able to make a much larger sample set of what kind of player this is now based on their answers. And the same thing for when I ask them about what they don't like. And it's the same thing. And I also do the same thing when I'm a player and I'm joining a new game. I ask the DM, like, okay, well, what was your favorite session? Like, or like, what kind of NPCs do you enjoy running? And I ask them all kinds of questions that don't necessarily lead them to give me the answer I want, but that let me get the variables that let me ascertain whether this is the right fit for me. And I really haven't been led wrong by taking that approach yet, because I found out a lot of things that people didn't even know about themselves or how they handle situations.
I
Yeah.
agree, Bunny. I used that, Rob, that link I sent you for my my Google forum.
Uh-huh.
That's anytime I'm about to run a long campaign, something that's going to be super lengthy, I always send that out. The version I gave you is the public version, but it's the same questions for the prospective players. And the way I'm pretty sure you read it already, but the way those questions are posed, yeah, it identifies what I see as key elements that help me determine, okay, how much combat, how much exploration, and how much social need to be in these particular games based on the player's answers.
Right. Yeah, and we're gonna actually give the link to everyone in the chat so they can take a look at that as well at the end. Yeah. So, and I said earlier too, Bunny, that I interview players. I don't. I mean, I might ask them things like you do, like questions about their previous experience and stuff. But I more just talk to them about, like, on a personal level, like, where do you live, and what kind of things do you do for hobbies, and I kind of just get to know them a little bit as a person, because I can tell right away whether I'm going to get along with them or not. And then as far as aspects of the game, I just kind of let that happen. And I've been lucky so far, I guess, that once I invite a person to come to my game, I usually haven't then have it blow up in my face because they're a complete, like, role player all the time, or they are the person that wants to dress up in cosplay and be on camera with me while we play, and whatever. Which actually might be kind of cool. I don't know, but I usually don't do video. So anyway, anybody else have any thoughts on that at all, or we move on? Okay, I'll take the silence as moving on. Speaking of cosplay, actually, so and I'm sure most people that are watching right now live on Twitch, or if you see this video later on YouTube, most people that are going to watch our show and want to talk about DM's expectations and players' expectations probably already know this. But for those of you that might be new, or if you tripped across this video and lasted 2 hours and you're still with us, we just wanted to stress the point as far as what you can expect as a newer player or even a newer DM. Things that you see on Twitch or YouTube, like even my channel or any of the other people that are streamers, but especially something like Geek and Sundry and Critical Role, in that you shouldn't expect that all games are the same. So if you watch a live play or even listen to a podcast, Critical Role is a good example only because it's very popular and most people know what that is, even if they haven't watched it. You can't expect that all the games you get into will be similar to that or even close to that as far as style of play or activities that might even happen. So just be aware of that. I guess we're just sort of putting up a yellow flag saying, just be aware that experiences may be different from that. And I think Leroon, you might want to reiterate this or tell me if I'm paraphrasing you correctly, but the thing you were trying to make a point about was, don't go watch Critical Role for 2 hours and then come to a game in Fantasy Grounds and go, okay, I'm ready to play. I know what's up.
Correct. And that happens a third of the time. From, you got different stereotypes of people that join, and one of them is that. So
yeah,
you have
so a lot of
times you have the other guy too.
What's the other guy?
The guy that says, I've been playing for 30 years. How can you fucking teach me anything?
Oh, right. Their arrogance has led them to
Mm-hmm.
a path of negativity and spiraling down into a black hole. Yeah, I know that guy.
I find that an easy way for me to get new players to understand my point is when I say, okay, say like view going into a DM player situation as going into a new relationship. You're not going to expect girlfriend number 2 to be exactly like girlfriend number 1. In fact, you're probably hoping that they're very different, right? So if you look at it that way, you're not going to go look at someone else's relationship and be like, that's exactly what I need, because you're not there, right? You're not either of those people, so you can't have exactly that. And it helps them figure it out and like experience that they might have more experience with.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. I got a little, I went a little bit off into space a second because when you said the word girlfriend, I thought, I wonder if I will ever have one again, and then I kind of melted down a little bit. But and so I wasn't paying attention for like 5 of those seconds. But yeah, but no, I think that's a good point. And you know, a way that you can help people if you yourself, those of you watching the show, are DMing or even perhaps thinking about DMing and putting together a group. You would more than likely, if you're watching our show, be using Fantasy Grounds to do that. And the way that you can help people who are newer, you know, like I have the 5e pickup games, which we actually do recommend any new player come by, even if you don't know that much about 5e, or if you don't know that much about Fantasy Grounds, we still recommend new people come and hang out. But if they literally have never played, we send them to FGC. We send them over to Leroon's Stomping Ground, Fantasy Grounds College, to maybe take a class on character building and a class on combat, and get them sort of, you know, wet their whistle, or watch a couple of the games first before you get in, because it has blown up in probably almost every streamer that I know of when they've had a brand new person that's never used Fantasy Grounds and possibly never even played Dungeons and Dragons before. It was less of a gaming session and more of a seminar on how to use the software, and that's why FGC is so awesome, is because there is a place for that, and you don't want to allow players to come into your game that have absolutely never used the software before, because it's not going to be a game, it's going to be a teaching session. And there's a time and a place for that, which is Fantasy Grounds College, and or having someone watch your stream. And that's kind of the point we were making in the previous thing, is don't watch Critical Role and then think you're going to come play in our games. Watch our game and then play in our game. You know, watch how we do it. Watch how Jake
That's true.
streams. Watch how Bunny streams. You know, watch how I stream. And so you want to try to, I mean, if you plan to get into gaming with a specific group, you need to make yourself aware of how they do it. So that's just the only point I was making on that. So the last point we have written here doesn't mean we have to stop talking, but the last thing we had written down to talk about is, if a DM has created content for players to read, players should read the fucking manual. Our TFM is read the fucking manual. Not doing that is a great disrespect to that person's time and effort in preparation. So, like, for example, I've gotten into it with my players about not reading the message of the day that pops up when you log on to Fantasy Grounds. I have this big giant document and it's rough. You got to go here and you got to spend 20 minutes reading this. But if you don't, you're not going to know what the hell's going on. And when you say, well, can I do this? And I say, that's in the house rules. And I go, well, I didn't read it. Then, you know, I'm going to fucking melt down on you and kill your character and never invite you back. That's harsh and that's a joke. I'm not really going to do that. But you should definitely, if DMs have prepared things for the players to look at, whether it's a handout, it might even be a handout that comes as part of the pre-written module that came from Wizard of the Coast or something. But you need to respect your DM's time and commitment to the game by at least acknowledging that you've paid attention to what they've prepared for you. And if that's something you can't handle, then perhaps you should go find a one-shot or another campaign run by a DM who doesn't care about that. And they're like, yeah, just show up. Like, for example, 5e pickup games, I do ask, you know, I say to people, anybody can show up and anybody can play. As long as you're 18 years old or older, that's really the only requirement. But you do have to have read these rules so that you know how it all works. And it's not because I think I know everything and I want to make these rules for you to go through. It's completely and 100% solely designed to not have a situation where halfway during the game there's 5 players and one of them is just going, well, how does this work? How does that work? What do I do here? What do I do there? If you read these rules, you're going to know everything. There shouldn't be any questions after you've read this. So that, and again, this is the way I do it, and all DMs might not be like that. But the point I'm trying to make is, if a DM does have material for players to go over or learn prior to playing with them, you should definitely make the biggest effort you can to go over that material, or at least say to the DM, I'm illiterate and can't read. Can you tell me what I need to know? Or, whatever. I don't know what the thing might be. That was more of a joke. But do you guys have any opinions about that?
Yeah. Some DMs, they might write a lot, but most of it's asinine, self-masturbatory drivel. And like, I'm personally not going to sit through that sometimes, but I do give it a chance. And one thing I always tell DMs, right? If you want to do that, make sure the first thing you give them isn't barely comprehensible crap, right? Because they're going to assume all the rest of your stuff is absolute shit and they're not going to want to actually read it, or they're going to half-assedly read it, right? So as much as you want players to actually read your stuff, you have to be willing to actually edit it, take critique when like they ask for clarification, and think, oh, okay, maybe I should clarify on this point a bit more, instead of just saying like, you don't understand this, you're an idiot. Like, I mean, they might be an idiot, but they also could be right. You know what I mean?
Not really.
You don't know what that, you've never had that happen at all?
What I mean is that the subjective your advice you're giving, although I think you intend it to be helpful, isn't coming across as such, because what it does is that it assumes that there's a baseline standard for comprehension that everyone should be expected to obtain before they're allowed into this genre.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
It's not very inclusive,
No.
is what I'm trying to say.
No, but that's not what I was saying at all, though. I'm saying that if you're asking your players to read a lot of things, make sure it's clear. Like, you can have another player read it, and if they're giving you feedback and saying like, I didn't understand, could you elaborate on that? Take it seriously and do it. Because like you said, like, not everybody's going to understand things the same way. And it's better if you're a DM and you're expecting people to read, make sure that you can reach the most amount of players possible. I'm not saying that if you don't know how to write, don't write. No, I'm saying if you want to write things that you want people to read, make sure it's actually prepared and it's not like the very first draft of like mind vomit that came out and that you put down.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, like
Make sure it's readable. Got it.
My house rules have been, and actually the first thing in my house rules is in red letters is, this is an involved document, but it was created for a reason. Please read it. Like, that's the first thing it says. And
yeah, I think I like Rob's point of like, if you're not going to take the time to read something that I've prepared to make myself and everyone else's life easier, then you do not deserve to be in this game.
yeah, and it's and I even there's some other statement in here that says something about these rules may seem harsh, but they're there for a reason. And we've play tested many times, and we've had we've played hundreds of games, and this is what works best for groups. And it tries to aid the player in remembering that this isn't just me trying to be a hard ass. This is me having honed and refined my house rules over the course of years, and this is what works best.
Yeah,
And
I'm totally
so,
agreeing
yeah,
with you on that.
yeah. And
It's
but
just
yeah,
like,
but I
people have
agree
the
with your
rules and they
point.
don't actually work.
Right. And you can't, you can't, like, this document was, before I made it public, I really went through it and I gave it to like 3 different people to read. I'm like, does this make sense? Is there anything weird in here? Because yeah, you don't want to put out like you said, mind vomit, and then players show up and they're like, what the fuck is this? I don't understand any of this. I don't know what he's
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah, that would be a disaster.
So
So
one of the big things I've bumped into is people having rules, right? And then based on what they've told me prior to me going in, I read them and these rules don't match up to what they're saying. Like, oh, I forgot to update it. I'm like, you're adding new players to the situation when you haven't bothered updating your rules, yet making these rules mandatory to read, which is then therefore going to confuse more people. And
Yeah.
that's what bothers me, like not updating or keeping things. Like, if you want people to read things, make sure they're actually applicable, and that they don't have to go back and be like, oh, this is mental note number 23 that I need to remember for these rules that aren't actually written in these rules. So I better remember it in case we're in play, because it's not written down anywhere. And that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah. Nope, I agree with that. My rules actually have a thing down here that has a date and time stamp every time I update it. That was
Yeah, I do
updated
the
like
same.
4 days ago. Yeah, so then people go,
And I
oh
put a
fuck,
change
he's
log.
added something. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, so okay, I think we've covered all of our talking points. I'm going to give the link to Jake's survey before we end the show. So Jake, do you want to explain once again what this survey is? And I'll post the link in the chat so people can go here and they can answer if they want. You want to
Yeah,
say
no
what
worries.
that? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a D&D player poll, and the version that you guys will be encountering is the public one. So essentially, anytime I'm assembling a new group of players that I'm going to invest a lot of time in, i.e., as soon as I get a new set of girlfriends I'm going to hang out with for 52 weeks to complete a campaign, I want to make sure that, A, everyone at the table is coming with the same expectation of what we're all trying to get out of it. And B, I'm creating something that has the appropriate mix to address the various distribution of combat, exploration, and social interaction activities that'll take place throughout the campaign. And I've devised a series of questions that don't necessarily come across as, it's not as conventional as do you like combat? They're posed in a way, kind of like what Bunny was saying earlier, to hit on the various motivating factors of what brings a player to the game, and then using that information to custom tailor the game to the player group. So as far as the public one, this is kind of an amalgam of a bunch of responses. Right now, we're at a total, in the past couple of years, we're at a total of 147. But of the 147 responses, the results are still pretty accurate, in line with what I'm seeing today in play, as far as like whether or not players like getting into character, how in depth into the fantasy world they like to go, how dangerous or challenging, how many monsters or what type of monsters people like, how they go about character building, how they go about decision making as a group, how they go about collaborative storytelling, social interaction, exploration. Basically, it's just transcribing all of the things that are mentioned in the DMG as far as like all the different player types, and then coming up with a series of questions to extrapolate that information from a population. Sorry, I'm high and long-winded. So sorry.
That's all right. So yeah, go to that. I'll put the link one more time, just in case. So go to that and fill that out if you guys want to help shape information for the survey. We are going to give away one more prize, and so I'm going to start it right here. Boom, start. So this is the same as before. This is any DM's Guild item that I've made, whether it's a collaboration with another author or something of mine, and I am including packages. So exclamation ROB2E if you want to enter the drawing. We'll run a 2-minute timer, and I will pick a winner at the end of the timer. And then I think we're going to go ahead and close out the show. If you guys, let's see, do you role play well? Drake is asking, are you a dick? Boom, roll initiative. Fuck. Any final thoughts from any of you ladies and gentlemen here in the chat with me?
I thought it was a great chat. I liked all the different perspectives. I learned a few things about myself and the people around me. So I mean, it was a good takeaway for me.
I agree with that.
I'm very glad I got to meet Bunny, and I think that as long as people are, I think the ultimate question at the end of the day, regardless how deep in the minutia you want to get, is, are you having fun? If you're having fun, then you're doing it perfectly.
Yeah, that is true. If everybody's having fun, anything else that goes underneath that is not as important as the fact that everybody's having a great time. Shadzar put in Rob 5e. I don't know if he thinks that's going to get him 5 times the number of prizes. I don't know what he's doing. It is funny. Fury, anything from you?
No, but I mean, like what Laryn said, it's interesting to hear and kind of learn from what other DMs expect, especially because, you know, I'm playing in a game with Jake. So it's like, okay, what does Jake expect from his players, and, you know, all that stuff. But I mean, the survey he also gave at the very beginning was also helpful, and to kind of sort of prepare us to what he might want. And then, you know, in the gameplay, of course, adjusting, that's always super wonderful and nice of him to do.
Yes. Bunny, final thoughts.
It's always interesting for me to hear how people who have been doing this longer than me have done it, because I kind of just taught myself and I took a lot of what I've learned from writing and how I handle writing in general. I view role playing as like collaborative writing, and we're all making a story together. And so it's really interesting seeing how different people handle different situations and how they like to handle their stories as a preference. And I definitely want to try a few different things in the future, probably.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. There's always different, and I think that's probably even before we started the show, we thought we might discover that there's many different opinions that people have, and all of them can be equally as valid, depending on what your style is for play and your different groups and your different players, and everybody's going to have a different take, and that's what's so cool about role playing games, and basically any sort of gaming environment that you might be involved with, whether that's like playing Xbox online or whatever, whatever kind of gaming environment is, you're going to have a diverse group of people that you're hanging out with on voice or video chat, or whether it's at your kitchen table. And, the whole idea is to have fun. And this is a great hobby and a great way to do it. So yeah, so I appreciate everybody coming by. I am going to give away this last prize right quick. The winner is Jay Murphy O. So congrats to Jay Murphy. You know what to do, sir. PM me in Discord, and give me your DM's Guild email, and pick out the prize that you would like to have me award you from the DM's Guild. And we'll go ahead and close down the show. So I'd like to thank our guests today, Akmotu and Bunny, and this was a great talk, and I think everybody learned something, including all of us, which was awesome. And we will be back next week on Sunday. Our next show actually is a FGC game, so we're going to be gaming starting at 3 p.m. with some of the FGC staff members, and then those people will be invited to come on the show after, and we will talk about it. And then in the future, we'll let you know what our shows are going to be. And I will be back tomorrow with Module Creation Monday for whatever the hell it is I'm going to do. I haven't decided yet, but I'll be here. And so thanks, everybody. If we didn't get to any of your questions, or if you have more to say, feel free to come on into Discord and let us know what you're thinking about. And I appreciate everybody's support and hanging out. And until next time, good gaming, everyone.